friends, it's Kristen from Spree Create, a division of Spree, and today I am showing you the process of creating a 12 by 12 traditional style scrapbook layout using Vicki Boutin Collections, Sweet Rush, and Color Story. So I started by gathering all of the bits and pieces I had from those two collections. So Sweet Rush stencils and all the papers. I also grabbed some color coordinating Distressed Oxide inks, my Vicki Boutin Art Crayons. I grabbed some Mr. Huey's sprays and also grabbed some embossing ink and my white embossing powder. I don't use the embossing powders very much, so I just thought I would use it in this mixed media background. So I gathered all my 12 by 12 coordinating papers in those two collections. I grabbed all of the die cut embellishments that I had. I believe this is the Sweet Rush package. And I also grabbed all of the stickers, chipboard stickers, alphas, and foil stickers that I had available from those two collections. So I had initially printed out a 4x6 and realized that the picture was too big. I want to do a big mixed media background and I want lots of space. So I went back and I printed my picture on my Epson PM400 and printed that in a 3.5 by 5 instead. So what I have here are actually the inserts to a value kit from Project Life. So they're the trays that are inside that hold the cards. I saved a few of those and I like to use them for my mixed media. So I went back and I grabbed actually an old Vicki Boutin stencil. This stencil I thought would be good to combine to do a fun background with some of the new stencils as well. So I'm protecting my desk surface by throwing a mat underneath, and I want this pattern to come off of the edge of the paper, so I'm just trying to find the best way to place that. And I'm just going to use the Distressed Oxide and my dauber, and I'm just going to go for it. So this color that I'm using here is Broken China. And I had originally pulled some yellows and some greens to use in this picture. And you can see the picture just there off to the side. It's not super colorful, so what I'm trying to do is pick some of the colors in that picture, and I realized that my dad's shirt in that picture is really blue. It's got a little bit of pink in the picture as well, and then I'm going to add some yellow. So instead of trying to pull the yellows in the background that might get lost, I'm trying to pull that blue from his shirt. So I grab Blueprint Sketch in my Distressed Oxide and I start blending those two colors. So I'm not worried with kind of cross-contaminating my inks. In all honesty, I don't use inks too much. I use it basically for just what I'm doing here. So I do, although I do have a foam dauber for each color, when I am blending them out, I don't get too fussy. I just kind of go for it. So I'm not worried about the middle of the page because I know my picture is going to kind of cover that. What I'm trying to do now is just make sure that I have a nice balance of the light blue and the dark blue in the background. That's going to be showing on the top and bottom where my picture won't be covering it. And again, I'm not really fussy. I don't want a crisp edge on any of this. I don't want it to look like I went right to the edge of the stencil. So nothing here is perfect, and it's very intentionally kind of off-centered and a little bit wonky. So I'm trying to decide what to do next, and I know that I want to keep using some stencils to build that mixed media background, so I go for the Sweet Rush stencils, and I love the little heart stencils, and I'm just trying to, I know I want another one, so I'm just trying to decide which one to use, and I ultimately go for the butterflies. Mostly butterflies because of the size of the stencil. So it's a nice fun one. The picture really is just us walking on the street, so there's no real theme to it, and it's just a fun layout. So I decide that the butterflies, this is a perfect opportunity to use that. So I want to use some pink. I have no Distressed Oxides in pink, and I know that the art crayons are going to be nice and vibrant. So I just grab my little tray, color a little bit of that crayon on the bottom. I grab my dual tipped brush. I dab it in just a little bit of water, and then I also dab that off just to make sure that it's basically dry. It's just enough to pull the color up and get it on my brush. And then I just blend, and you can see here again, I just want that little pop of pink to be able to pull all of the fun colors from this collection together, but also pull the colors from the picture. So again, the picture is going to cover a good portion of this, so it doesn't need to be perfect, and I don't want clean, crisp lines of the full stencil, so I just kind of blend out the edges. And you can see here, I'm just really trying to figure out kind of the size and how much of my picture is going to be covering the background, so that I can make sure that I'm not putting all kinds of work into this and then ultimately covering it over with my picture. Now, I'm doing something here that you should never do. In an effort to show you what I'm doing with the art crayons, I pull that tray and put it over top of the mixed media that I'm working on and on top of the picture. That is a recipe for disaster. So I should be doing that off to the side, but I didn't. And so here we are. So I'm repeating the same process now, but I'm using the yellow. This is my way to incorporate all of the fun bright yellows in the die cuts that I'll be using for this layout, and just pulling those colors all together. So I've done the exact same thing to make that yellow just a little bit brighter. I also colored in a little bit of the darker kind of mustard colored crayon to get the color that I'll be using. And I'm just going for it. There's no rhyme or reason to this. I just want to make sure that, again, there's no crisp lines, but that I'm filling in the stencils. I'm making sure that each butterfly is actually full. And when I did the background with the other two stencils, I kind of left a section in the middle, and I knew that I would be using another stencil to kind of have a jut out, and I don't. So you can see here, it almost looks like a backwards K the way that my layout is going, but I know I'm going to balance it all out with a little bit of either with a die cut, and I think I ultimately end up doing it with the embossing powder, but I know that I'm going to balance that all out with as I layer all the pieces on. So I've incorporated the blue, the pink, and the yellow, and I'm happy with what it looks like for the most part. And now is the important part, which I normally skip over. It's time to clean. So I usually leave a package of baby wipes very close by and just wipe down my stencils really quickly, and my work mat, and the surface that I'm working on, just to be safe. So I sped up that process for you so you didn't have to watch it. So this is where I'm trying to decide what stencil or how I'm going to fill in that little void. And I switch gears completely, make sure that my butterfly stencil is completely dry. And now I'm filling that left-hand side center, and I'm going to do that with embossing powder. So I have my embossing ink. Once I figure out the placement, I am actually just really pressing in with the embossing ink, putting it right over the stencil. Now, again, this embossing ink is clear, and it's almost at the end of its life, so I'm putting it directly on the page over top of the art crayons and the distressed inks. You may not want to do that because you will contaminate your ink pad, but because I know this one is pretty much on its last leg, I don't mind using it. What I am doing is I'm using the light to go back and make sure that each section is really full and that I haven't missed any areas with the ink. So it's hard to see there, but you can just barely see how that clear, there's a little bit of gloss that's showing up with the lighting on the camera. So I'm just pouring a little bit of the embossing powder on there, And it's going to cover, it's not, this is opaque, so it's going to cover right over the mixed media background, and it's going to give a little texture because it's going to be glossy, and it's going to give a little dimension, but also fill that void in that corner. So just do a quick little tap and make sure that my areas are all covered. And we're going to make sure that we don't have any of those little loose powders, because when we use the heat gun, they will be activated. So we want to make it as clean as possible. So I'm showing you here. It's just enough that we filled in the stencils. And now we get the heat gun. So speed this process up, but you can see how well the embossing powder heats up and how much it covers the art crayon and adds just a little bit of texture and just a different element, and also fills that little void there. So again, I'm remembering this time to clean up all of those inks so I don't make a mess on my actual layout. And now we're going to work on building up that picture and using some mats to pull in some of those other colors. So this was a scrap piece of paper I had laying around. I thought it was great because it kind of had a watercolor. It wasn't solid. It had a big enough pattern that it wasn't going to compete with everything in the background, and it brought the color from the picture and coordinated it with the die cuts in the background. So I end up building up the mats and placing the picture, and for about another 15 minutes or so, I thought I was recording, but the video cut out. So once I have the picture placed, all of the embellishments, placing all the embellishments wasn't recorded, but you'll get the idea. So I'm going back through here now because I want a really bright hit of pink. That is what is missing from my pictures that I know I'll be pulling from the die cuts. So I go for this page. It's the back side of one of the color wheel pages, and I know that will be just enough pink. And I actually very intentionally use the manufacturer strip included when I'm cutting that, so that it's just got another little touch of pink. It just adds another layer without having to find some more scrap papers to add. So here we go for the close-ups. Like I mentioned, unfortunately, this whole section of the process video wasn't recording as I was working, but you can see what I did was I went through all of the embellishments. I picked my favorite florals, created a cluster on the bottom of the page that I wanted to draw down, incorporating the pink. I selected a few stickers and used the title, actually, Loving This Day was a sticker. I layered that onto a piece of white paper, fussy cut around that, and then used foam tape to give that dimension, as well as some of these butterflies. I used the little yellow butterfly there in the corner to balance the yellow from the opposite side of the page. I did the same thing with the larger butterflies to get that pink and the blue on the opposite sides of the page. What I'm showing you here is I wanted to use the clipboard clip on the top of my paper, or on the top of my picture, and unfortunately the chipboard stickers that were included were too light. So I end up fussy cutting this blue from this 3x4 cut apart page and use that one instead, and it helps to balance the blue. Like I said, I was trying to pull that darker blue from the picture, so that actually worked out perfectly. And there's a little bit of that color as well on the bottom of the page, so it works out. I used some of the holographic dot stickers that I took from this chipboard sticker pack, and then a bunch of the little phrase stickers from this holographic sticker pack, and I used those to layer on the side of the picture, and again just underneath. A couple of arrows, a couple of little dots that are spread from corner to corner on the page, and that was just enough to complete the 12x12 layout. So hopefully you are feeling inspired, and we want to thank you so much for watching.